Welcome everyone, I'm Blake from Bourbonr.com. This is the results for the first Bourbonr Blind Tasting. This is just a quick video to give you the results. If you want to check out the full video with notes and discussion from all the other tasters, I'll put a link in this video, or you can check it out at bourbonr.com/blog. It'll be on there under the Bourbonr Blind Tasting episode 1. So just to give you a little a little background on how this tasting worked, I sent out samples to 4 different tasters. All these guys are experienced, know their whiskey, and had them rate 6 different whiskeys. Didn't give them any information, just said, hey, rate it. Here's the scale I want you to rate it on. It's a pretty tough scale, so you'll see some of the scores may be a little lower than you're expecting, but you can check out that grading scale in this blog post as well. So we're just going to jump straight into it. In 6th place out of 6 whiskeys, we have Wild Turkey 101. Comes in with a 76, so a little disappointed with this one. Wild Turkey 101's one that I point people to on a pretty often basis, where they're looking for something to buy. So maybe it's more for cocktails and that kind of stuff, but still a pretty good daily drinker. It 76, not terrible, but not quite as high I would like to have seen it. I like to have those surprises in blind tastings, and felt like 76 pretty appropriate for something that is on the most store shelves for 24 bucks. Next up, we have a Henry McKenna 10-year, but it's from 1996. So this is a dusty Henry McKenna. It's 10-year-old, and so if you're not familiar with the Heaven Hill brand, they make Henry McKenna. They had a fire back in the early 90s that destroyed their distillery and a lot of their warehouses. So one of the big things on the trading markets is pre-fire Heaven Hill and newer Heaven Hill. So this is pre-fire Heaven Hill. I've had a lot of good bottles from pre-fire Heaven Hill. This one, I would agree with the tasters on this one. I didn't love it, but that's kind of what you get with single barrels. Some you may love, some just don't quite meet that standard of what you're looking for, but thought it was pretty interesting that this came in at a 78.25. Next up, 4th place, and probably the most disappointing to me in the whole tasting, is 1994 Wild Turkey 8-year. So that's not the original bottle. If you're familiar with Wild Turkey bottles, and especially dusty Wild Turkey bottles, you'll know that their corks are basically, they break at least 75% of the time whenever you go to open them. So that happened on me on this bottle, so I had to put it to a different bottle. And I'm a huge fan of dusty Wild Turkey, and I thought this would be a one that showed out really well. It didn't. It's really just middle of the pack here. Not to say that there weren't some other great bourbons that it's being kind of compared to, but still a little disappointing on the dusty Wild Turkey with just a 78. Next up, this bottle was a little surprising to me. So it's tied for, we'll call it tied for 2nd place. It's the Michter's 10-year, but from 2016. I wasn't a huge fan of the 2016 release, but with everyone's notes and everything that you can check out on the blog post, it did pretty well. It had a pretty wide range of between the 4 tasters, the highest giving it a 90 and the lowest giving it a 65. So had one of the higher ranges. Some people loved it, some people hated it. So it was interesting to see that the Michter's 10-year did really well, tied for 2nd place. Next up in that tie for 2nd place with Michter's 10-year, this is one that I think is a really big win in this blind tasting. So this is the Henry McKenna 10-year, but this is the new version. So this is a bottle I bought at my local store, Browdy's, 30 bucks. It's on the shelf. It came in 2nd place amongst some really good bourbons. So if you haven't tried Henry McKenna, you need to check out a bottle. It's really good. That's one that we talk about a lot on the Bourbon Community Roundtable, and it's like a secret you don't want to get out because you don't want it to become scarce. But if you get a chance, 10 years, 100 proof, It's hard to beat for $30. Finally, the winner of the blind tasting, the first Bourbonr Blind Tasting, is a Michter's 10-year, but it's from 2010. So this is one of my favorite bourbons. It's from 2010. It was bottled in Bardstown, whereas most of the stuff is now bottled in Louisville at their distillery. And I just love this bourbon, so I was glad to see that it did come in first place in the blind tasting. Um, it's rumored to be older than 10 years, rumored to be Stitzel-Weller, has a lot of that lore, bourbon lore behind it, but at the end of the day, it's just a great bourbon. A lot of butterscotch, stewed apple notes. The disappointing thing is you're going to have a really hard time finding it. So unless you go to the secondary, you're probably not going to see it. But if you ever see an older Michter's 10-year at a bar, something like that, definitely try it out because it's worth the pour. So that was it. I hope you enjoyed this blind tasting. I feel like we gave a good mix of, yeah, there are some $150 bottles, even Dusty Wild Turkey's going for $300 a bottle in some markets. But there's also the the Henry McKenna 10-year. That's $30, and on most shelves in your general liquor store. So definitely check that one out if you get a chance. And that's pretty much it for me. Thanks for watching, and look for the next blind tasting coming out next month.